Hi everybody, this is Jack Benedict, and welcome aboard In the Nest as we review the recruiting class for the IUP Crimson Hawks for this year. With me is Coach Paul Tortorella, and he's going to run down the players who are coming to IUP in the fall. And of course, all of our program here brought to you by the Student Co-op at IUP. We thank them very much. And Coach, we thank you. It's been a real busy time. You get an opportunity now to sit down and review what you have. And first of all, how about this class that you have coming in? Are you pretty well pleased at the guys that are coming to IUP?
Yes, I think we we hit some needs. We had a couple positions we definitely had to sign some guys that, obviously when you sign them, you're hoping they can come in and hopefully help you as soon as possible. So I think we hit the needs by position on both sides of the ball. The class academically, I think the overall GPA was 294 for the whole class. So academically, we've got a lot of great students in the class. So we were happy with it.
We know that Lenny Williams is returning, his fourth year. It's hard to believe it's his fourth year already, but the cupboard was bare. Tell us about the two quarterbacks you recruited.
Well, we brought in a quarterback from Steubenville High School, Javon Davis. He won the state championship over there in Ohio. He does it all. He's a lot like Lenny in regards to in the pocket, out of the pocket. A lot farther along as a quarterback because his dad was an All-MAC quarterback at Kent State, and his uncle was an All-MAC quarterback at Ball State. So he's been coached up, at a young age by his dad and his uncle, and his high school coach who's been there forever. So he's really what we're looking for in regards to the intangibles, and he has all the stats. He won a state championship, and then Ymir Wilkerson at Harrisburg High School, same thing, winner. Last 2 years, I think they lost only 3 games with him at quarterback. Same thing, a pocket guy, but also out of the pocket, very athletic. A little taller. He's a little over 6 foot. Lenny's about 6 foot, and Javon's 5'11". So same type of cookie cutter mold, I guess you would say, for the quarterbacks that we have in the program.
Now you lost some people that were, let's put slash, tight end, H-back. You brought a couple of guys in. Tell us about them.
Well, that was the other area where we needed to get some guys in here because, the last 2 years we've used 3 guys at those positions, Edwards, Pierce, and Jackson, and they're all graduated. So Grant Smith, tight end from Central Dauphin, exactly what you're looking for size-wise, has great speed for a tight end, very athletic, long body. A guy that I was surprised that did not get a 1AA offer, to be honest with you. He'll give us a little something we haven't had at that position, a guy that's a vertical threat down the field. Then we brought in a true fullback type from North Allegheny, Ryan Langdon, that's a big-time lead blocker that we use and a lot of other people don't use. So, in talking and recruiting with him, we use that position, which helped us get him, obviously, but he is a really ferocious blocker. And he also runs the ball in short yardage situations, so that'll give us a little something also.
Okay, those are some of the people on offense. Defensively, used to rotate 8 players on the defensive line. 4 of those players are gone, including Averett and Weldon, that were all conference for a couple of years for you. You have some replacements there. Tell us about those guys.
Well, inside we got the Fisher, DeJour Fisher from Aliquip, 310 pounds, 6'2", monster, very athletic, good feet. Needs to get more physical, but we'll get that out of him. And then the other inside down guy's only 6 foot tall, Ayub Dale from Easton, where Moad and Weldon were from. He was probably the most productive defensive lineman we saw on film all year. If he's 2 inches taller, he's a 1AA player without a doubt. So those were the 2 inside guys. On the outside, we brought in the Heasley kid from State College, very good player. I think we talked before about him reminding us of a bigger Eric Neff, a guy that played here in the past. And we also brought the Pine Richland defensive end in, Will Mayer, and Puffenbarger. He was really a big linebacker at Manheim Township, but he did play some defensive end, so we'll start him out as a defensive end. He's a 245-pound kid, 6'4", very aggressive, out there in that league they were in, they really didn't like playing against them.
Well, that's never fun for the opposition,
Right.
That's for sure. Well, we're going to be back, and we're going to talk more about some of the recruits for this year. We're calling it In the Nest, and we'll be talking with Coach Tortorella all about this year's recruits and what we're looking to the future. Coming off a tremendous year, 13-1 last year, he was Coach of the Year in the conference and the region. We'll be back in a moment, and our show brought to you by the Student Co-op at IUP, and we'll return after this for the Co-op Store.
To the Co-op Store to get all your IUP apparel. Get your hawk on.
And welcome back to In the Nest. This is Jack Benedict with Coach Paul Tortorella. We're talking about the recruits for this year, those high school football players who have said, well, we're coming to IUP to further our education and also to, of course, play football. 17 student athletes who signed their national letters of intent. Coach, we're going to follow up maybe with some of the people we talked about in our first segment here. By the way, our show is brought to you by the Student Co-op at IUP. We thank them for presenting this show to you. The quarterbacks, Lenny Williams is a record setter, and he's a leader. He's been here for 4 years now. This will be his fourth year. You mentioned Ymir Wilkerson from Harrisburg and Javon Davis from Steubenville, Ohio. Do you see, let's talk about Wilkerson first of all, do you see some of the qualities in him that you saw in Lenny?
Well, yeah. I mean, they're the same type of quarterback in regards to very athletic. I think when Lenny came here, he was more of an athlete that played quarterback. Now he's turned into a quarterback that's just a good athlete. I think the two guys that we brought in, and Wilkerson, talking about him, he's a quarterback, that's a good athlete. He's just not an athlete. Won a lot of games at Harrisburg High School, big games against really good competition, played with 5 or 6 Division I players on his team, and he was the leader, the captain, class president, left-handed quarterback, and does all the things both in the pocket and out of the pocket, can run the ball if you need him to run it. So he brings a lot of what Lenny's done. He fits in our offense.
Let me ask you this. You had been a defensive coordinator all your life before you became head coach. When you see a left-handed quarterback as a defensive coach, does that pose a different problem or not?
It's mostly you worry about, obviously, with right-handed quarterbacks protecting the left side of your defense. It just flips, when the ball's on the right hash, the offensive right hash, a left-handed quarterback's going to be, working to the field because he's left-handed. So it just flips, the dominant side. What is it to the field or the boundary? I don't make a big deal about it on defense. Some offensive guys make a big deal about it's a different ball to catch. I go way back, long time ago, when I first was in coaching at Maryland at Boomer Esiason, and he was a left-handed quarterback, and it didn't look like it was any different than anybody else. And he was a high draft pick, obviously. So, the quarterback at Alabama's a lefty that came in and won a national championship for him. So it really is just it doesn't make a difference, I don't think.
Well, let's talk about the other young man from Steubenville, Ohio. And now in visiting in Steubenville this year, the festivities that they had for that particular weekend, they are very proud of their football, the Big Red. They brought in their high school band. How about Davis now? He's the other guy that you brought in. What about him?
Here's a guy that, one of the toughest high school positions in the country is to be a quarterback at Steubenville High School. It really is. They try to play as many home games as they can because they sell it out. They've got a jumbotron in their stadium for high school. They pay teams to come in and play at their place because they want to play as many home games as they can. I mean, it's a football factory. It's the real deal. And this kid's been their quarterback. He led them to the state championship this year. He has all the intangibles. His dad and his uncle were great quarterbacks in the Mid-American Conference, so this guy's been coached. hopefully the apple didn't fall far off the tree there. And he's the same way. He's an in-the-pocket guy, an out-of-pocket guy, can throw it deep, can run it. So we're really happy to get both guys.
All right, let's go on the defensive side. We talked about the young man from Aliquippa, DeJour Fisher. We know the tradition of Aliquippa. This guy, you said, can make a difference defensively. What's the best thing that he does?
Well, for his size, he has tremendous feet, and he's just kind of scratched the surface of what he can be defensively.
What's he listed as?
I think he's 310 pounds, 6'2", but very, very athletic. Great feet. That program, obviously, that's another legendary program. I think if you see most of the guys, a lot of our guys come from legendary high school programs. And he comes from a family of Fishers that of the Beaver Valley. There's been a million of the Fisher family that have played in the NFL, that have played Division I, and so forth. So he's got great pedigree also, but he's really athletic and has great feet for his size.
All right, we talk about size. How about a guy on the offensive side who is 6'6", I see, and about 320. I'm talking about Justice Martinez. Coatesville, you said, is his origination. He's coming from a junior college, and it sounds like he doesn't have a whole lot of experience, but it certainly looks like he's got a lot of talent.
Well, he only played, I believe, 2 years of high school football, so he was a little bit behind, and that's why he went to a junior college. And then playing 2 years in that league, that junior college league that they're in, they play Nassau, they play Milford, they play a lot of good teams against a lot of people. They play Lackawanna. Lackawanna, I think, had 16 guys signed yesterday throughout Division I and Division II. And he had a couple kids on his team also signed with some other schools. So he's playing against good competition, but the thing is we're trying to get bigger, continue to get bigger on both sides of the ball. I mean, obviously, you saw what West Florida had up front on both sides of the ball. They were huge. So we're continually trying to get bigger, but also better. This guy's a big guy, very physical, very aggressive, tough, plays right to the whistle. An effort guy. And again, he's one of those guys that the other teams don't really like playing against him. So that's a good factor to have.
I know one thing you had mentioned last year before going in, and you said you wanted to get size, but also, like with offensive and defensive linemen, you wanted height too. And we saw that last year with your team.
He'll fit right in with our offensive line. The guys we have returning are all 6'3" or bigger. This guy's 6'6". Zaire Willis will be back. He's a 6'4" guy, 6'5". So, we've gone to the point now where if we want to go to the national championship game, you've got to have big people on both sides of the line.
Yeah. All right, touching upon some of the players, we have other names to bring your way, and we're all coming to you compliments of the student co-op at IUP, and it's called In the Nest, and we're glad to have the coach here with us in the Nest as we talk about the recruits coming up for this year in IUP football. We'll be back with you after we take this time out for the co-op store.
Come to the co-op store to get all of your IUP apparel. Get your Hawk on.
And welcome back to In the Nest. This is Jack Benedict with Coach Paul Tortorella. We talk about the recruits coming to IUP in the fall. 17 student athletes signing their national letters of intent the other day. Tort, I'm going to bring up a couple of guys here. You're going to have to help me on pronunciations. Of course, you don't have to deal with that later on, but I do. But I'm going to call him Obi. He's a defensive back from York, Pennsylvania. And Anyu Tanwu, is that right? Anyu Tanwu.
That's close.
Is that close? You know, when Kwazi Owusu Onso came, Coach Tipper said, you're going to have fun with that. Well, I'm going to have fun with this. Tell me about him.
Well, he's very similar to what Kwazi was coming out of high school. Big, tall, athletic guy, long arms, can run. He's a track guy. He's a 100-meter guy, long jump, broad jump. So he's very athletic, plays corner, which is what we want. You know, we like to if we can get a little bit of size at corner, he brings that. Very aggressive. Hasn't played a ton of footballs, just played, I think, 3 years. Family's from Nigeria. Great people, great family. Probably a guy that down the road has a lot of potential because he's another guy that's really hasn't scratched the surface yet.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I'm going to stay on the defensive side here with on the defensive end. We mentioned, I think, briefly touched upon Drake Puffenberger from Mannheim, a defensive end. Motor never stops running, you told me. Is that right?
Well, that's about the best way to explain him. And he's a throwback, he could have played 30 years ago the way he plays. It's like a bull in a china shop. Plays hard, very aggressive, very physical, plays to the whistle. Again, he's one of those guys that the coaches in that league told Coach Smith, when he was recruiting him, that he's one of those guys that if he's on your team, you love him. If he's not on your team, you don't like him a whole lot. So that's something that we look for. Physical, aggressive guys. We want to be tougher than the opponents we play, and he brings that to the table. Very aggressive. Played linebacker in high school, big linebacker. Then they put him on the edge and rush him. We're going to start him out on the edge. Think he can be a very good player for us.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to go to State College here, and a young man named Jackson Heasley projected as a defensive end. What's his story?
He actually grew up in Indiana. Then he moved down to Tennessee, and then he moved over to State College, I believe, the last 4 or 5 years. He's a defensive end, another high motor guy, but has been very well coached. When you watch him on film, Coach Leonard, our defensive line coach, says that he does some things that you don't really see high school kids do, that you really have to coach when they get here. He's really good with his hands, sets the edge very well. Good pass rusher, plays hard. He's a wrestler, tough. So that's the mold that we're looking for. But he's also very athletic, and he runs very well too.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times you don't have to go out of the area or even out of the state to get a good player. You got a couple of kids here from Penn Trafford right down the road. Tell me about Will Mayer. He's listed as a defensive end. He, by the way, is going to be participating along with Wilkerson and Grant Smith in the East-West All-Star game that's going to be played at Altoona Mansion Park on May 6th. So tell me about Will Mayer.
Another guy, same mold, plays really hard, very aggressive. Not real tall, but he's got length to him. His arm length, and he's all arms and legs, and he's only about 6'1", but he really has the characteristics of a guy that's 6'3". Very productive in a good league. Has been playing there for 3 years. John Ruane, a former IUP player that I recruited here, was his high school coach. Probably one of the best coaches in the WPIAL. Another guy that's really a lot farther along, comes from a great program, been well coached, tough, very aggressive. Think he can really help us as a defensive end.
Okay, I'm going to stay in the neighborhood right there at Penn Trafford, and his teammate is Cam Suma. Now, that's a familiar name to IUP fans and former players. Bobby, of course, his dad played here at IUP, and I'll put it this way, his mom's even more famous. Kathy Torsha, one of the all-time great, Hall of Famer for women's basketball. But in fact, I saw the day whenever they came up, I think you had these folks over during the basketball game. Tell me about Cam now. I know he's listed as an athlete. Where do you project that he might play?
Well, we'll probably start him out at safety. He's got the body type that he's only going to get bigger. He's long, athletic. He was a big receiver on offense. He probably could go to H-back or tight end if we go that route with him. But we'll start him off at safety, and he also could grow into a linebacker. Very athletic in regards to does a lot of things. Blitzes off the edge on defense, plays the pass on defense, is a receiver on offense, goes in motion. Very smart football player. Again, that's a big attribute that we're looking for, guys that know how to play the game. Told his dad, hey, look, we're recruiting him not because of you, but because of Cam. And he had just a big smile on his face, but his pedigree's pretty good between his mom and his dad. Again, the guy that's hopefully didn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to bring up a guy here, a wide receiver. Last year you had a plethora, as they say, of wide receivers. But you lost, if I remember correctly, if you had 8, you lost about 4. Is that right?
I think we lost 3.
3.
But we still have a lot of other guys who haven't played a whole lot in the program. It's their turn to play. So it was not like we were going out and recruiting. We really weren't going to recruit hardly any receivers. This guy kind of showed up on our radar late as a receiver, smaller guy, a lot like Don McNeil. But we've got guys in the program, like Hoff, Williamson, Zach Kelly, that haven't played a whole lot. It's their turn to step up. So hopefully we can redshirt this kid when he comes in, and then probably go out and recruit some receivers again next year.
Okay, we're talking about a wide receiver out of Philadelphia, Ibrahim Deonyu. And he's the young man there at the wide receiver spot. But you never have enough, especially in today's game. The college game has changed so much, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, we have, we only play with one running back, and we got 4 or 5 of those. And so we play with 3 wideouts every snap, sometimes 4. So you need to play with, we played 8 receivers last year, 8 different receivers. And we had some injury problems at that position with Pegues and Woosner. So a lot of other guys, Hughes, Brown, JoJo Goss, Don McNeil, they got a lot of playing time with the injuries to the other 2 guys.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to talk about a guy named Tortorella and a guy named Petropola. Those are familiar names to the IUP football fans. And we return with Coach Tortorella in the nest. And our program brought to you by the Co-op Store, the student co-op at IUP. Back with you right after this for the Co-op Store.
To the Co-op Store to get all your IUP apparel. Get your hawk on.
And welcome back, everybody, to In the Nest. Jack Benedict along with Coach Paul Tortorella. We're talking about names that are maybe not familiar, all of them right now, but in the future probably will be. Our show brought to you by the Student Co-op at IUP. Coach, let's start first of all. Eastern Pennsylvania has produced some pretty good players for IUP in the past. You got another young man, a defensive tackle. Tell us about Ayub Dale.
He's probably the guy that defensively, out of all the D linemen that we looked at on video, was the most productive. He's only 6 foot tall, but if he was probably 6'2", he'd probably be a Division I kid. He's got a lot of stats for a defensive lineman. Sacks, tackles for loss, very physical and disruptive. Probably, coming out of high school as a productive defensive player as there was out there.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's a young man who's an offensive lineman, Cody Coppinger from Bel Air, Maryland. You have a pretty good player from Bel Air on your team right now, don't
Damon
you?
Lloyd.
Damon Lloyd, the
They're
linebacker.
from the same high school, John Carroll High School. This kid's a great student, plays center. You can never have enough centers. So he'll be a guy that we'll bring in and hopefully redshirt him and develop him into a pretty good player.
What's his size?
He's about 6'3", 275, 280. Big kid, very aggressive. Again, same thing, and shows that he could play at this level.
Yeah. No, I was thinking in the terms of, maybe the last thing that some recruiters think about is a center. I may be totally wrong on that. But when it comes to the time to replace, it's hard to find somebody. Jeff Arnold's been there for a while, but eventually you're going to need somebody. So,
correct.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's a good move there. We'll see down the line. Harrisburg has produced a lot of different people. Here's a D-back from Harrisburg, Kevin Littles. What about him?
He's a guy that was played at Susquehanna Township with the same high school as Takai Turner. They're very similar coming out of high school. They look like twins, to be honest with you. Very productive, good athlete, does a lot of things from the safety position. A little bit taller than Takai, a little bit more slender. Plays in space a little more than Takai did coming out of high school. But very similar type players and personalities.
All right. We move on to, I had mentioned before, familiar names. Petropola and Tortorella. Let's start with Petropola, Colin Petropola, Wellsboro. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's Mike's brother. What's his story? What does he play?
He's a center. So again, you need to have at least three centers in the program for all the drill work you do, for when the scrimmage work you do. So the centers have no problem going and playing another position on the offensive line. It's hard to get a guy that plays guard or tackle and make him a center. So if you can get as many centers as you can that have the size, they can always play guard or tackle. So obviously he's a guy that knows a lot about the program. His brother's been a very good player for us. It's a no-brainer to bring in. We've had a lot of brothers before here. So it's we kept it in the family, so to speak.
Let me bring it up to follow up on that. You talk about center guard and that sort of thing. Colin McAllister, was a center coming in, wasn't he?
Yes.
And now he came in as a guard last year, and he makes all conference.
Oh, he played great. He had a great year, played every play, stayed healthy, which is hard to do in the offensive line. And he had he was, I believe, first team all region, and that was his first year starting. So he's got 2 left. We're expecting big things from him next year.
Yeah. All right. Tortorella, huh? Joey Tortorella, Keystone Oaks. There was a guy who used to play for Keystone Oaks named Tortorella years ago, but we'll go. This is your nephew, right?
That's correct.
Linebacker?
Linebacker, about 6 foot, 200 pounds. The thing, he knows how to play football. He might not be the fastest. He might not be the fastest guy out there or the biggest, but he's a pretty productive player. He actually played his whole senior year with a torn meniscus in his knee. But he's just a guy that knows how to play the position. We've had guys like him in the past coming out of high school, and they overachieve when they get here because they just know how to play the game. So hopefully we're going to get that out of him. If not, then I'll have some problems with my brother, I guess.
Your brother Mark,
yes,
who is we see him as a basketball official in the PSAC a lot. But that's great. How much did the family thing enter in? I saw somewhere on the message boards and whatever, there were other teams, other universities that wanted him.
Right. He wanted to go. He's a really good student. He's a great student, very high academics. But he wanted to go to a football program that was successful and that it was important. And he knows about our program, more than anybody. So when push came to shove, that's basically what his deciding. He wanted to go to a program that it was important to the university and that had a lot of success.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know who that is. We'll be back in a moment. What we're going to do, I'm going to bring up some names of players that you're familiar with who played for IUP in the past but couldn't play last year. Will they be back this year? And also, what's up for the schedule for the fall, and when does spring ball begin? That's right. Season moves pretty quickly. We'll be back right after this for the Co-op Store.
Come to the Co-op Store to get all of your IUP apparel. Get your Hawk on.
Welcome back, everybody. Our final segment here of In the Nest with Coach Paul Tortorella. And we want to talk about some familiar names of players who did not play last year because of injuries or whatever the situation. First of all, Tort, Rocco Esposito played part of the season with you. Came up from Wake Forest, transferred, kid out of Pittsburgh, injured unfortunately, and then was out. There's been some talk that he may be able to get another year. Is that possible?
Yes, it looks like that's the way it's going to be. The 1 year at Wake Forest, he didn't play one play. So in the past, I believe if you were on the roster, it counted as a year. But I think there's a new rule that, from a couple years ago that is, if you're on the roster and you don't play one snap, then that doesn't count as a year of eligibility, I believe. So the word we're getting is that he'll definitely be eligible next year.
Okay. Drew Harris, Chris Temple. Now, I did not see much of Harris last year, and he got hurt in the spring. Chris Temple helped you out a lot during the course of the season. You've got a lot of running backs, and certainly these guys have proven that they can play too. They're going to be back?
Yes, Drew was he missed the semester with Achilles. So he's back. He has 2 semesters left, so he's got obviously this spring, and then next fall will be his last year. Chris Temple had already never redshirted anyway, so he just got a red shirt for his injury over the summer. And he did a great job. He helped with those young running backs, leaned on him heavily. He did a great job helping Coach Barker. Great teammate, great player. I don't know, he's close to 3,000 yards rushing, I think, in his career.
Yeah. So
his senior year, he hopefully will be productive also at the running back position. And with those guys coming back, Dwayne Brown will probably, we've talked about moving him to defense and having him play safety next year for us. So one of those decisions, you think it's going to be a tough decision and you're going to have to talk a guy into it. And after about 20 seconds, he said, I'm fine with it as long as I'm on the field.
Yeah, he's a pretty versatile player.
Right.
Was there any thought at moving one of the running backs to a wideout?
Well, you got Justice Evans that had played wideout in high school, but he has been so productive at the running back position. And those guys, you need a lot of them. They get banged up. Luckily, we didn't have any major injuries at the position last year during the season. So, you need, if you're playing with one running back, you definitely need 3. So, we'll have 4 or 5 actually. But there's things we can do with Justice and put him out there in certain formations and play with 2 running backs and motion him out the receiver and so forth. So we have that option also.
This last guy, you touched upon him earlier, Zaire Willis, big young man, offensive lineman, fun guy, just a great kid. He missed because of an injury. What was it? Was it ACL?
Yeah, he tore his ACL in one of the spring practices last year near the end of spring.
He'll be back.
He was starting at right guard for us before he had gotten hurt. He's full go now. He's cleared for everything. So we're looking forward to getting him back.
Projected as a guard?
Yes, and we've got a lot of offensive linemen, but again, the 2 spots you need a lot of players in our offense is running back and offensive line.
We will talk eventually about transfers, but there's one young man I did want to bring up, Tyler Bolega. He was an all-state young man, played at Derry. You area fans would certainly remember him. He was at Seton Hill last year. He transferred. He came here in January, I guess, right?
Yes, he's on campus in classes. He'll be out in the spring. He'll be out.
Where would you use him?
We're not sure yet. He may be on defense or he may be a slot receiver. We're just going to see where he fits in numbers-wise.
Tell me when spring ball begins. I'm ready.
Well, we're thinking, weather-wise, I believe it's the 23rd of March, that Friday. And then we'll go we'll get 4 practices in, I think, and then take Easter break, take a little break there. And then we should be able to get finished by the 21st, I believe, the following, that last Friday, the Friday before the last Friday in April. Mm-hmm. Try to have a scrimmage or a spring game that night like we had last year.
Mm-hmm. The schedule shows initially that the first 3 games, Ashland, Millersville, Lock Haven, would be away. What's the latest on that?
Well, we're pretty sure we're going to end up switching the Millersville game and playing them at home this year, and then going to play there on the road in 2019. So we don't have 3 away games right off the bat. So that's pretty much a done deal. Talking with Steve Roach, our AD, so we won't have to play 3 in a row on the road first.
Mm-hmm. Well, all in all, sounds good. Now, of course, there's a lot of work to be done.
It's starting all over.
It's starting all over. And congratulations, too. I don't know if I had mentioned at the beginning, but we just learned here in the last day or so that Tort is one of 6 people in the Indiana community named to the Pennsylvania Business Central Top 100 People of the Year. And you say, what did I do? Well, I think what they're looking at is not football alone, but the involvement with your team and what it's done for the community.
Well, if that's the case, I can see that. The community's been great. Our players have really embraced that. And we did have 3 home playoff games that probably helped the restaurants and hotels and gas stations and, all the businesses here in Indiana. So maybe that's why, I guess.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Tort, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. And so that's it, folks. That's our recruiting show for this year. First of hopefully many years to come. We call it In the Nest. We want to thank our sponsor, the Student Co-op at IUP, and for their great help, Lou and company down there. For Coach Tort, this is Jack Benedict. Have a Major League night.